Good morning on this Sunday, June 16th. Here's a look at our top stories on the Georgia gang. Governor Brian Kemp picks an industry outsider for insurance chief. The feds focus on the city of Atlanta's former CFO and his city-issued credit card. And combine BB&T with SunTrust, you get Truist, spelled with an I. Huh? Well, Alexis, Phil, and Theron are all here. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia gang starts now.
Governor Brian Kemp names his pick for acting insurance commissioner, Doraville Police Chief John King, who is not an insurance industry insider, but does know a thing or two about cleaning up an agency and serving his country.
I wanted to get a person of high integrity above everything else, plus somebody that could run an agency.
Those were the crucial qualifications for Governor Kemp's choice for insurance commissioner, now that the newly elected Jim Beck is suspended. The feds have accused Beck of stealing $2 million from his former employer. He's facing a 38-count indictment.
Were laid out to me, and the indictment just led me to realize that, Mr. Beck could not keep the integrity of the office if he continued to serve in that role, which is why I asked for his resignation.
Governor Kemp appointed Doraville Police Chief John King as insurance chief, the first Hispanic constitutional officer in Georgia. The governor says he feels confident in King's ability to lead the agency.
When he went into the Doraville chief position, he had a similar circumstance where he had to clean some things up, and he got in there and put his nose to the grind and figured out what was going on, and he was very thoughtful about that process.
King is also a major general in the Georgia National Guard. And Phil, I've interviewed him several times. He's respected by so many. I think he's a great pick, even though he doesn't really have necessarily insurance experience.
Well, that's right. And as a veteran myself, I've got a soft spot for the general, and he was a tank commander. And I understand from his friends and colleagues that he is a good manager, obviously being a general. So I like to think that there's a good team already in place at the Insurance Commission office, and so I think we can, even though he doesn't have experience in that area, I think he'll be a quick learner. And
Theron, he brings a lot of experience on the law enforcement side. He also brings diversity, but were you surprised by this choice?
I was not. I think if you listen to the governor's comments, he wanted someone that he could trust, someone that has a high level of integrity, but us also remember that this police chief was a staunch supporter of this governor during his campaign. And so what we're seeing is that he's really tapping people who he's developed a relationship with over the years as Secretary of State, now governor, and I think that he really wants to put someone in there that's going to stabilize that agency.
I also think he can thank Stacey Abrams. We can all thank her for making this historic appointment, because he is looking outside of the usual guys that he already knows in terms of the ethnicity of this particular appointee.
Well, there are a lot of minorities in the Republican Party, and we don't have to thank Stacey Abrams for that. They just like the principles of the party.
Well, we can thank her for this appointment, because how would he appoint a person who has Mexican heritage when he's going to deport them and put them on his bus and
well, that's a wild generalization, but anyhow, I think the people of Doraville and all around, I saw where Doraville's been accused of being a speed trap where he was chief, so maybe that'll end now that he's gone.
Well, Kemp was busy with appointments this week. Cobb County Chief Magistrate Court Judge now has a new title. Governor Kemp named Joette Holmes District Attorney. She's the first African-American woman to hold this position, replacing Vic Reynolds, who went over to head the GBI. Alexis, your thoughts on this appointment, because you were just talking about diversity.
Exactly. She's not just the first black woman, she's the first black person to hold the DA position in Cobb County. And again, we can thank Stacey Abrams for that, because I think, he's looking at diversity because he wants to get reelected, and he sees that she's coming after him in 2022.
Phil, I think Alexis really wants to fire up our Facebook viewers about Stacey Abrams. Yes, so your thoughts on this appointment?
I like to, I'm going to emphasize that this is a qualified person. Absolutely. Regardless of race. We can agree on that, I think.
When you're a person of diverse ethnicity, you have to be overqualified just about.
Well, let me just talk about Joette Holmes for a second, because I think, will she do well? I don't know the answer to that, but I think we will know soon. And why do I say that? Because Vic Reynolds was the DA, and he was a pioneer in terms of fighting the gangs. He lobbied the legislature to get a tough anti-gang prosecution law. He's, of course, now, as we saw in the video, over at the GBI. I would hope that the new DA Holmes is going to keep the Reynolds panel's team, and if she continues the vigorous prosecution of gangs, which are a huge problem, I think she'll do well and will be in good stead for re-election, or for her own election.
Dan, that's what I was going to ask you. Her name on the ballot in Cobb County, which we know has shifted to a more Democratic place.
Yeah, and I want to agree with Phil and Alexis. I definitely think that the governor chose the most qualified person who happens to be an African-American woman. I think in this evaluation, what the governor's team was looking at is electability. You just touched on that, Lori. Can we appoint someone in a blue county like Cobb who can actually be elected? But I do think, Phil, we need to give her a chance. Let's not start picking staff members this early on. Vic Reynolds did do a lot of great things in Cobb, but when you have a new district attorney who comes in this office, she wants to make sure she has the right people in place that's going to put forth her message. And so, big win for the governor. What you're seeing is a trend. We saw it in DeKalb, we're seeing it in Cobb, where he's picking the most qualified people who happen to be people of color. But I do think that this woman is going to do a great job, and I'm really happy that she was selected.
Absolutely.
All right, I want to switch gears to a really important subject here in Georgia. House Speaker David Ralston this week named members to a House study committee on maternal mortality. Unfortunately, Georgia leads the nation in the number of mothers who have died during pregnancy, childbirth, or just a few weeks after. Theron, I just want to ask you, what do you think of the timing of this? Because opponents of the so-called heartbeat law have said these numbers are only going to get worse, that OBGYNs are going to be afraid to move to Georgia, women in rural Georgia will lose more access to health care. So what are your thoughts on the timing of this?
Well, if you look at this, Lori, one of the things that happens shortly after the session ends is the speaker usually puts these committees together, mini conference committees. There's sort of been a trend that he's done around transit and other things. I do think that it was escalated because of the sort of backlash that we've seen from Georgians and people outside of Georgia around the heartbeat bill. So I do think this speaker is to be commended for putting together a bipartisan committee. But I would ask that they not only take the entire time during off session to try to expedite some recommendations, because we know that this is a huge problem. And one of the things that we could do to help this problem is expand Medicaid in Georgia. And that's something that, you know, a lot of people heard from both candidates, a lot of candidates running for office last year.
And Phil, I mean, Governor Kemp is looking at the expansion of Medicaid with Medicaid waivers, but why is it that Georgia has always fallen behind on this? I mean, we've been 50th for several years.
Well, I think it goes back to kind of segue from what Theron was saying, that there have been two Georgias, unfortunately, especially in the area of health care. And this OBGYN crisis of a shortage has been around a long time, way before we were talking about any heartbeat bills. So this is a good thing in coming. It should have been actually, frankly, been done before.
Alexis, and this impacts more women of color.
Absolutely. It's a historic issue for women of color in particular because of the lack of access and the lack of quality and the lack of affordability of health care for prenatal care. So I think it is something that Theron's pointed out, that we need to have expanded Medicare, and it still remains to be seen if the governor actually gets that done.
Now, an expansion, however, is very costly. It could break the bank. Nathan Deal had the numbers. Brian Kemp, the new governor, has the numbers. So let's not get carried away here.
I think the one thing that we want to highlight is that you got two Republicans working together. At least the governor did get the Medicaid waivers passed, and you got a speaker who's saying, all right, this is important. Let's let this be one of the first committees that I push out in a bipartisan way. So I do think the Republican leadership should be commended for taking, steps forward to take the lead on this issue.
Right, and those waivers will help low-income people.
Absolutely, and also the issues that impact women are getting the Republicans' attention finally.
Well, back to the politics, too, of this committee as well. It was introduced, the resolution, by a Democrat, is my understanding, and then the Republicans stepped in. I mean, it's good policy either way, whether politics is involved or not.
Yes.
But the makeup of the committee, 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats, 2 African-American women as well.
Yeah, and then I think that, to your point, Lori, that a Democrat introduced this, and I think that this speaker historically has pushed for issues on the Republican and Democratic side that's been doing. So again, to Alexis's point, I mean, we need to act swiftly on this, and it does have politics, but let's give them a chance. Let's see how quickly they can come back with some best pathway forward.
All right. Well, coming up, the feds are looking into Atlanta's former CFO, questioning some of his purchases on the city-issued credit card, including guns. We'll discuss coming up.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
The AJC is reporting the feds issued a 7-point subpoena looking into questionable purchases and invoices involving former CFO Jim Beard. Theron, I know you say let's wait to see what happens. But according to these documents, he purchased military-style weapons with taxpayer dollars. There were also invoices addressed to a Jimmy Beard at Atlanta City Hall for $10,000 and $20,000 again. This just doesn't look good.
You know, I have to smile and chuckle with the panel because the thing that's so bizarre about this is for those of us who know Jim Beard, CFO, for the former CFO for the city, you would think that what's at question is that he made these purchases that he thought were certified, legitimate city purchases. What's going to be really interesting to come out in an investigation is, number one, who were these guns purchased for?
And I think he told the AJC last year that they were for police protection for the mayor, but in that case, they are police officers, so why wouldn't they just go through the Atlanta Police Department?
So that's what, on that one, we're going to have to figure out, is there some type of policy in place at the city where the CFO has the authority, he or she, to make that purchase, or why didn't APD do it? And then as far as like the thing that's really just so disheartening is that when you see that this mayor and the council are trying to work together to move the city forward and to do great things, it's just this cloud of suspicion and this ongoing investigation. So I will still say let's not rush to judgment, but this doesn't look good because it's just a continuation of a lot of things that happened under the former administration that the public is anxious to see.
Phil, Theron brings up a really good point about this cloud of suspicion, and this investigation has been going on for some time. So what do you think? I mean, is it time to wrap it up? Or, you know, I know that they have several investigators, I think more than any other case.
I think this is the biggest FBI and U.S. Attorney investigation in the country because it's gotten so complex due to the bribery and corruption with airport procurement to things like this that went on in the Kassim administration, and some of it spilled over into the Bottoms administration early on, from what we're hearing and listening to. But you know, this Jim Beard is a disgrace to public service, and the fact that you mentioned that he's invoicing himself. I mean, you know, Jim Beard invoices Jimmy Beard. You know,
allegedly, we think, right?
Well, it's a serious accusation, and it's not being made up. I mean, that we have the invoices. So I think this guy. We need to expose this. We need to continue to answer your question. This investigation, keep peeling away the layers of the onion.
And I think, Alexis, you know, a little bit more details. They come every week, so we're always discussing this. But even you were surprised by some of these details.
Yeah, this is it's just a strange occurrence. But evidently, he thought he had authorization to do what he did because he wasn't buying the guns to stockpile at home. He was buying them for the mayor's security detail. And perhaps they had to make a trip because the mayor did a lot of traveling in his last term for the 2016 election. So maybe they didn't have time to go through that.
Well, he thought he could get away with it because of the culture of corruption in that city hall.
Well, let's not rush to judgment again. This is a subpoena.
How many indictments have come due to the corruption probe?
I'm sure you got. Yeah, I'm sure you got a count.
Yeah, I think number 7 is coming.
I'm sure you maybe have it posted in the right side of your mirror.
Well, you laugh, but this is a serious matter. Corruption is a serious matter.
You're asking me how many people have been indicted. I'm just letting you know I don't keep count. What I'm saying is that it's unfortunate that this happened. And it continues to happen, but let's not, you know, make this man seem guilty on this show when it's basically a subpoena. He's cooperating, he's testifying, he's giving the information that he wants.
We're telling people what he's done.
Allegedly, all right? He's made these purchases, so we got to let the judicial process play itself out to see, was it a crime, was it illegal, did it break any sort of ethics codes? And I think that's what we are doing. So I'm not, let me be clear, I'm not promoting corruption at City Hall. I think any corruption at City Hall is wrong, and those people should be fired. They should be prosecuted if they've done something. But at this particular point in this phase in this investigation, let's not rush to judgment and prosecute this guy on the show.
Yes, but I'll say it again, it just does not look good. So the MARTA board approves its almost $3 billion expansion plan. We're going to see more buses first. Phil, a lot of folks are not happy about this. I mean, you're not going to please everybody, but especially supporters of the Beltline.
No, and I've come around. I was skeptical of the Beltline a few years ago, and now I like it. And
really?
I think, yes, and you know I've said that before.
He's evolved on the issues there.
Well, the plans have gotten better, actually. Instead of streetcars to nowhere, we actually have some sensible plans. But I will say this, I'm a supporter of buses as a good way to relieve congestion quickly.
Yeah,
And it is the easiest thing to do, and I understand both sides of the issue, and I think all of us on this panel understand it. I will say this: I think we need to proceed with the buses as a short-term solution, but I would like to see more done with long-term solutions.
And I think because, Theron, when you talk about MARTA, when you think about MARTA, I think the average person thinks transit is more train-oriented than bus-oriented.
Yeah, and I think what I was able to really read, and some of the folks I've talked to, listen, MARTA wants to get along with the Atlanta Beltline supporters, even the Atlanta Beltline Inc. and the Atlanta Beltline Partnership. Full disclosure, I'm on the board of the Atlanta Beltline Partnership. There's a willingness to work together on here. But I do think we have to understand is that's a phased approach, and one of the best, most affordable ways to reduce traffic, to reduce congestion, to expand transit is to have a BRT, bus rapid transit option. And so I do think that there's a lot of people who want a lot at once, and I just think that this is a phased approach, and MARTA should be commended for taking leadership on this, because we've criticized MARTA in past years for not doing enough. So now they're doing something, but the Atlanta Beltline supporters, rightly so, are complaining about what they're doing. So ultimately, I think they'll get in a room and we'll figure it out.
But Phil, we're happy to know that there is an expansion of the streetcar, because like I said, maybe somebody will actually ride it now.
That's right, but not for free, I hope.
Well, it could be a tourism investment.
Do you think it'll make some money?
No, I'm just saying.
No, okay, me either.
I mean, that shouldn't be the aim of it. It's a tourism thing to encourage
all
people to go
agree
from
on
the
something.
King Center to the Centennial Park. Come on.
Well, coming up, turn off your spell check when you type the name of the merging SunTrust and BB&T banks. We discuss the name change after the break.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
I think we're going to have some fun with this one. Truist with an I. SunTrust and BB&T bank officials getting a huge backlash over the new name. And I think it's for good reason. I mean, when you make up a word that you have to explain and there's really no good explanation, you really miss the mark on two trusted brands. Phil, you want to weigh in on this?
Well, I think it's absurd. Some New
What
York,
do you really think?
some
Come on,
New
don't
York
hold
ad
back.
agency came
Don't
up with
hold
this.
back.
Did they ever do any focus groups here in Georgia? I don't think so.
Could have hired us to come up with it.
Plus, as a journalist, it's grammatically incorrect, which is very upsetting.
Every time I type it, my spell check goes crazy. It can't even give me a word to put in there.
It can't be Truist EST, right? It just,
You're as upset as I am about
I
that.
am,
Yeah,
man.
okay.
But I don't
while
really
it
care, but
is
it's fine.
a unique name, one of the things that we don't want it to overshadow is really the hard work between SunTrust and BB&T coming together for this awesome merger. I think.
Well, maybe that agency should have thought of that before they came up with this.
Right, and I don't know how much that agency got paid. Maybe we should investigate that. But no, I think that the one thing is look, the name is definitely catching a lot of people's attention. I think they said they're going to keep the Brave
SunTrust?
Stadium
SunTrust Park?
until the end of this season. And I
Right.
think next year there's going to be some type
The
of
Truist Bank.
some conversion. So,
Park.
yeah.
Crazy.
Well, I think that they should have done what the zoo does. You know, you have a new baby giraffe. Maybe they could have gotten all of their customers to weigh in. It could have given them a lot of media attention.
Have a contest?
Contest.
And they could have gotten some really good positive feedback. But
Maybe a better name in the long
We'll
run.
see. We will see.
That's when diversity really counts.
You're on a diversity kick
I
today.
am. It's
well,
a good
the
thing.
inevitable growth is happening at PDK. The airport expects an almost 40% increase over the next 20 years in flights. More corporate jet hangars are also on the horizon. Residents gathered this week to really speak up about the expansion plans. And the question is, how can PDK be a good neighbor, Theron?
Well, the first thing that I was really anxious to really convey to our viewers, and I didn't know this, is that not only is PDK the second busiest airport in Georgia, it's the 9th busiest general aviation airport in the country. And so one of the things that we know from the Super Bowl is that all of the celebrities, the corporate jets were landing in the PDK. And so they've surpassed Charlie Brown, which for a while I think was the second busiest. But the second thing is that I'm very happy to commend the local elected officials. I was told that there was a meeting this week where you had the Shamley folks get together, some folks from the community, and there was open discussion about, of course, reducing the noise pollution that comes along with when you buy a house near a a airport that's the second busiest in the state. But also there's great conversations about how economically it's going to build a region. And then the last thing is that I did have a conversation with CEO Thurman, and he's looking at ways of not only to improve the building, but also the hangars, the restaurants, and other amenities there to really make this a great experience for his customers. So I think ultimately it's going to be a good thing for the state. They just got to continue to talk to the community and make sure that everyone is on board.
And Phil, I mean, you buy a house near PDK, you kind of know what's coming with the territory.
Well, you would think so. I always laugh at people that, you know, buy homes right on the edge of an interstate. But anyhow, I tend to agree.
Right?
Yeah, and then complain. I agree with Theron. I think it's a great asset. I'm glad to see this growth. You know, there's growth of these airports all over the state. In fact, the legislature has been working on that with its logistics and infrastructure committee that they're doing. That's why I've always been in favor of over in Paulding County, that perhaps expanding there, because as Metro Atlanta gets bigger, we need to take pressure off of this airport and, of course, Hartsfield and Jackson.
Another thing that came to me really quick to Phil made me think about something with the state. The State Economic Development Agency and the people who are looking at this was the one of the top recruitment tools to get big corporations to bring jobs to the state. And so they use PDK, you know, which is run by DeKalb County, as a marketing tool and as an incentive to really make sure that folks can come here with their companies.
And that's right. And we also want to do that with other airports around the state, Augusta, Macon, elsewhere.
Correct.
Well, big corporations mean big corporate jets.
That's right.
All right. Well, Phil, another fight over this internet sales tax, which comes up every single year, I swear. This is strange to a lot of consumers because no matter what I buy online, I know I'm paying Georgia sales tax.
Yeah, so what's
Well, that's exactly right, but it was a great press conference the other day at the Capitol, and it united Democrats and Republicans, and I think everybody else in between, because we were getting ripped off by, what was it, billions of dollars that aren't being paid. Walmart is the biggest victim. I want to just point that out right now. Yeah, but anyhow, I'm glad that this finally is being focused on. It needs to be correct. We need the money. It beats a tax increase that the Democrats always want.
It certainly will be needed after the retail stores close down, because everybody's going to be shopping online, so they're going to have to come back and replace that revenue.
I mean, there's a lot of push and pull, you know, with this issue.
Right.
I feel like I've been covering it for so many years, and it's still the collection issue is the biggest one.
Well, we need to be collecting, that's right.
All right, Theron, just because we have a second, I want to mention that the Atlanta Police Department is really cracking down on scooter riders on the sidewalk, that they are now going to enforce the ordinance that you will be fined $1,000 if you are caught riding on the sidewalk. And I know you personally have a vested interest in this too.
Yeah, full disclosure, I represent Lime. And listen, as I said before, Phil and Alexis laughed at me. I said we encourage the people who ride the Lime scooters to wear a helmet and really give them some type of reward for doing so. But look, while I do represent Lime, I would say this: we want to make sure that people feel safe. There's been a lot of incidents where we see folks on the sidewalk, in the street. So I do think the city is to be commended for being very cooperative as we continue to really, migrate through this whole problem. But it's a good problem because we know that people are riding the scooters. It's an economic generator, and not just young people. I mean, if you go in Midtown, Atlanta, Buckhead,
but are they riding in the streets or the sidewalks?
Well,
aren't they supposed to ride in the streets?
Well, they're supposed to ride in the streets and the bike lanes.
Isn't that dangerous?
Which I would never do.
But also, it's not just in these areas. It's also on the south side. Well, it's dangerous, Phil, when you leave the station and get in your car and drive to wherever you're going to go next. There's always any dangers when you are operating a vehicle or an electronic scooter or a skateboard. Right. I do think that you're going to see a robust conversation between the companies to really make sure they cooperate with the city.
Love them or loathe them.
Wasn't Alpharetta that banned them just the other day?
They did.
They did.
All right, wrapping up. We're coming up with winners and losers next.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
I'm going to mention two winners first. Billy Payne, the man credited with bringing the Olympics to Georgia, and former chairman of the Augusta National, inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame, an incredible man and so well deserved. Also, the U.S. women's national soccer team, a huge win over Thailand 13-0.
Amazing. Celebrate
all you want, ladies, because you earned it. Isn't that right, Phil?
That's exactly right. In fact, segueing on that, a lady from Marietta, Emily Sonnet, is on that team. And they whipped Thailand, 13-0.
Yes.
That was great. That showed them.
They need to get the same money as the men, though.
Oh, I hear you.
Yes, they pay for equal work.
hear you. Well, listen, speaking of money, we have a winner. The state, again, has its AAA bond rating. It was announced by the governor the other day. And, of course, that's, I think we're only one of 7 or 8 states that have that due to great management by the last 3 governors. But anyhow, another winner over in DeKalb County, we have a Superior Court Judge, J.P. Bollet. And he is the 108th Trump-appointed federal judge just this week. He's going to be a federal judge. He's a fine jurist, and so J.P. Bollet is my winner.
J.P. is a good guy.
And President Trump is a winner for doing the trade deal with Mexico. It's already having the Mexicans for the first time are putting troops on the Guatemalan border, and they're stepping up on their asylum tightening.
All right, we got 1 minute, Theron.
All right, Martha Zoller, who used to be a Georgia Gang participant, she's going back to WDUN radio, so big shout out to her on June 24th. The Georgia Drew Charter golf team became the first all-African-American golf team to win the Georgia High School Association state title. And then Mr. Kerry Stewart, who is the executive director of the Atlanta Fulton County Recreation Authority, they spent $52,000 to send these senior citizens athletes to New Mexico to participate in the Senior Olympic Games. So I want to make him a winner.
Awesome. All right, Alexis.
Kenny Leon is going to be my winner this week, along with the True Colors Theater Company that he founded some 15 years ago. He's stepping aside and becoming the founding artistic director emeritus, and Jamil Jude is taking over the next season. They had a big fundraiser last week. They recognized Felicia Rashad and Pearl Craig, among others.
All right, well, congratulations, and congratulations to Leadership Atlanta, class of 2020. It's their 50th year. A big shout out to them. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week.
And happy Father's Day.
Yes.
Oh, we forgot
The
that.
opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.